Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to today's special event organized by World Vision Hong Kong with CESGA Alumni Asia Friends of the Earth Hong Kong. I'm your MC, Bell In. I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining us this evening. As you may have known or already heard, today is not just an ordinary day. It is in fact World Environment Day, which has been celebrated for the past 40 years by more than 150 countries every year. This year, it focuses on land restoration, desertification, and drought resilience. Similarly, our topic today is aligned with that focus. Next, we will be playing a short video titled Everything is Connected, to first give you some idea of our nature-based solution, also known as Farmer-Managed Natural Regeneration, FMNR, for combating climate change.
Everything is connected, from the tiniest of insects to the largest of forests, and everything in between. When an ecosystem is in balance, all the plants, animals, and the communities that live within it can thrive. But when trees are cut down and land is burnt, the soil loses fertility and its ability to sustain life, leading to erosion, destructive winds, droughts, flooding, and a loss of biodiversity, and consequently suffering for the world's poorest people. But hope is not lost. Just waiting underneath what appears to be barren landscape is an immense underground forest, ready to regenerate into a productive ecosystem. Farmer-managed natural regeneration teaches communities how the simple act of pruning can release the untapped energy of deep underground root systems, rapidly turning small shrubs and stumps into mature trees in a matter of years, completely transforming the world around them. When we apply this low-cost and very effective technique to much larger areas, something amazing happens. More trees mean less soil erosion, wind and heat damage, trapping moisture in the soil and restoring fertility, so farmers can grow bigger, healthier crops. More trees mean more feed for livestock, giving farmers healthier, more productive animals. More trees mean more firewood, timber, and hay, which can be sold to diversify income and create new investment opportunities in the community. As habitats begin to regenerate, businesses like honey production become possible, as do previously unimagined income opportunities such as ecotourism and even trading carbon credits. Everything is connected. All the wonderful, tangible outcomes created benefit not just the environment, but the communities who depend on it for their survival. Families can put more food on the table, earn and save more income, build better houses, and send their children to school, helping to break the cycle of poverty. Natural regeneration is a catalyst for sustainable development that leads to a brighter future for the next generation.
How very lovely. Okay, so first, it is our pleasure to welcome the Chair of Board of World Vision Hong Kong, Mr. Edmond Chen, to the stage as he welcomes you all here today. Please give a round of applause.
On behalf of World Vision, I want to extend our warmest welcome to each and every one of you for attending the Restore Land, Restore Hope Symposium. Today is World Environment Day, and this year's theme is all about land restoration, desertification, and drought resilience. This couldn't align better with what we aim to discuss and achieved today. We are excited to see so many like-minded executives, professionals, and business gather here to explore practical nature-based climate actions for sustainability and to collaborate in restoring hope in our fight against climate change. Climate change is a growing global concern, and World Vision has been addressing this issue for a long time through our programs for children and the communities they live in, especially the most vulnerable ones. Our environmental and climate actions cover natural resources management, integrate water resources management, and climate-smart agriculture. Today, I want to highlight farmer-managed natural regeneration. We call this FMNR. FMNR is a simple, cost-effective, yet incredibly powerful reforestation techniques that revitalize degraded forests. It's a cornerstone of many of our projects and programs. Tony Rinaudo, who many of you know as the forest maker, okay, and his team have been championing FMNR in 27 countries, regreening millions of hectares of degraded land across Africa over the past 4 decades. With FMNR, we have seen remarkable results, restoring degraded land, boosting food and crop production for people and their livestock, and improving livelihoods. This technique has also reduced the impact of disasters like droughts and floods, making communities more resilient. On a larger scale, FMNR projects can generate carbon credits, which provide financial support for sustainable community development. Lastly, I would like to express our sincere gratitude to our guest of honor, Dr. Choi, all the speakers and guest moderator for enlightening us on the topic. We also thank the European Federation of Financial Energy Societies and Friends of the Earth Hong Kong for co-organizing the event with us today. We are also very appreciative of the support from the Australian Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong, Carbon Care InnoLab, International Chamber of Sustainable Development, and SGS. It's truly a pleasure to have all of you here today to share ideas on how corporations, foundations, and philanthropic efforts can back practical and sustainable climate actions like FMNR. I hope we all can join forces on this initiative to achieve better outcomes for children in vulnerable communities and to restore biodiversity in our natural environment. Everything is connected. This principle holds true in nature and in our efforts to help the vulnerable become more resilient and to ensure sustainability. I hope you all enjoy the symposium today, and I look forward to partnering with you in the future to make the world a better place. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chan. Now I would like to welcome the Honorable Choi, SBS JP, to the stage as he provides us with his keynote address. Please, Dr. Choi. Let us welcome Dr. Choi. Dr. Lam is the chairman of the Council for Carbon Neutrality and Sustainable Development Department in Hong Kong. He's also a member of the Green Technology Finance Development Committee. Please.
Yeah, can I
The
use
stage is
this
yours.
mic?
Yes.
Yeah, because I don't have a speech. Tony, Daniel, Edmond, Amy, and speakers and fellow guests. Actually, I should welcome you here because I'm the former board members of World Vision Hong Kong. And so as Chairman just mentioned, we are all connected. So I believe there are many like-minded people like you who are connected with World Vision, connected with the issue of climate change, or connected with ESG and or all the SDG sustainable development. And for me, I'm not expert. I'm not an expert in climate change, but I was many of time being tasked with some long-term and difficult issues in Hong Kong in my public services. I was the chairman of our elderly commission for many, many years, but actually I am a pediatrician by profession. You know, the government just wants to appoint those non-expert in the field of with particular problem. And the key is trying to collaborate with more partners. I think that's part of what World Vision is doing today, trying to collaborating with different partners to make our land better and to bring hope to our people, especially to those countries with more poverty. While I was the board member of World Vision Hong Kong, I found that this organization is very credible, with very strong governance and managing projects in many places in the world, especially in those poorest of the poor. And actually, I traveled with the former chairman to Tanzania, Ethiopia, and to visit their community projects. And before I was being appointed as the chairman of Sustainable Development in Hong Kong, I learned what sustainable means in a poor country, in a poor community, how to bring a community together, how to tackle the problem of water and water supply, agriculture, how to bring the families and the villages together, especially to take care of the poor children. So World Vision, I would say, is an organization which is very good at sustainable development and in collaborating with many, many other partners. So as far as I know today, we have many USG operator, practitioner, carbon trader, or some charity funder here. And I would like to recommend you to support World Vision. And especially when the issue of climate change and climate crisis is so prominent now in our world. Hong Kong is just a small city, actually. And the people of Hong Kong may not know the impact of climate change globally. And you know what, while I was the chairman of Sustainable Development, which the council has been renamed to be the Carbon Neutrality and Sustainable Development. Actually, I have some of my members here too. And Hong Kong people actually don't know much about climate change because we are a very well-built city with very good infrastructure. Until recent years, we have some severe weather situation, and we just passed our hottest April. I believe we had the wettest May in our history, so we are raining all the time. So So all until now, Hong Kong people are aware that there is really an issue of climate change. But if you go to Africa, you see it very vividly. And as I know, in Africa, climate change is not an academic issue. It's an issue every individual people, every individual family, they will face. No matter it's a flooding or drought or whatever, or the heat, and all these are having a very huge impact. As I mentioned, I'm a pediatrician, so I love children very much. And they are facing a very, very severe situation in those countries. So we have a very good healthcare system. We don't have much dengue fever here, but climate change will bring all this up and actually impacting on the healthcare system in those poor countries. So a sustainable, a good solution to help all these families to tackle the climate change, I would say is a must. And for Hong Kong, if we can support them, and apart from the direct benefit to the individuals in those countries, is to educate ourselves what exactly climate change is, what the impacts exactly are having in our Mother Earth, and also to the poor children in other parts of the world. And actually today I came here to learn the Farmer Managed Natural Regeneration Project. And Tony has been doing this for 40 years. So I believe at that time nobody mentioned climate change. But what he is doing is actually impacting on at least I can name 5 or 6 UN SDG, no matter it's on poverty, on biodiversity, on the restoration of land and and the ecosystem, whatever. And so no wonder I know Tony got an award from UN as, am I right? The UN SDG award, right? Yeah. And so so I believe it will be a very good opportunity for us to learn from what Tony is doing and what is happening in Africa. So please, if you have the opportunity to join hands together with World Vision, please do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Lam. For your meaningful keynote, can you please stay on the stage? As our chair of board, Mr. Chan, will present the certificates for you for our gratitude for your contribution tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a great honour and a pleasure for me to share tonight. I thank the Hong Kong General Chamber of Commerce and World Vision Hong Kong and all the other participating organisations that made this evening possible. So it's a great pleasure for me to share not only technical speech on the method, not only talking about the impact of climate change on vulnerable communities, that this is actually for me a lived experience, a very personal passion for the environment that goes right back to childhood. So I really am very happy to be with you tonight. My family and I moved to Niger Republic in West Africa in 1980. We were fresh out of university, and the landscape that confronted us was deeply shocking. Even though in my lifetime this land had been a biodiverse dryland forest with fertile agricultural fields in the clearings, permanent springs of water, and even wildlife, in 2 short decades, it had been reduced to this, barely able to support life. Certainly, climate change was a factor, although, as you said, we didn't have much awareness of it back then. In hindsight, we now understand the whole of West Africa has undertaken a 30% reduction in annual average rainfall. So it was a very big factor. But as people's food security decreased, as there was greater poverty and the population grew, there was more clearing of that remaining forest. And this kind of environmental destruction has consequences: increased frequency and severity of drought, explosions in the number of pests devouring their crops, very intense winds that destroyed the crops, and very high temperatures. And people regularly went hungry. Everybody suffered, but the burden on women and children was greatest. It was harder and took longer to collect fuelwood, to draw water as water tables dropped, and even to find food. People were poor, people needed the labour of their children, so few had the opportunity to go to school. I struggled. I thought, if deforestation was one of the root causes of all these problems, then surely putting trees back in the land, that would go a long way towards solving them. And it wasn't that I was particularly inept, but everything that we tried failed. And I studied the textbooks, I consulted the experts, I experimented with different seeds, different methods. Nothing worked in an economically viable or sustainable way. And at that young age, it would have been very easy to give up and go home, but everything changed. And actually, personally, it came as an answer to prayer. Everything changed when I realized everything that you need for restoration is literally at your feet. And if you look closely at what appears to be a useless bush, it could be a desert bush, it could be a weed in that photo. For 2.5 years, I sped past these plants. I walked over them, ignoring them. But on this particular day, something got my attention, and taking a closer look at the leaf, which is a little bit like a signature, it tells you what species that plant actually is. And I realized it's not a bush, it's not a weed, it's a tree. And in my travels through the countryside over that period, I knew there were millions of these trees just waiting to be released and to regrow to full size again. That was the start of a revolution. I call it the underground forest because across that landscape there are living tree stumps with the ability to re-sprout, and many, many millions of dormant seeds just waiting for the right opportunity, not only to germinate, but to survive through to maturity. If we had special vision and we could see into the soil, we would quickly realize that when you cut a tree down, for most species, it's not the end of the tree's life. And they have access to deep water, nutrients, stored sugar. If we can protect that tree for long enough, it can actually grow very, very quickly without a nursery, without planting out, without all the things that go with tree planting. So very low cost, very rapid, and very scalable, just by working with what's there. And so my whole approach shifted. I'd been seeing this as a technical problem, and I needed so many multiple millions of dollars to do this. I needed decades to transform that barren landscape, when I realized that everything that was literally at your feet. And at the root of this, it was what people believed about the value of trees, the value of environment, that was driving negative attitudes and destructive practices. And so the battle line shifted. I was no longer fighting climate or the Sahara Desert. I was fighting mindsets. And to this day, since that point, actually 95% of what I do is regreening mindscapes. If I win that battle, the rest is relatively easy. And I would argue, even in our societies here, if we want to beat climate change, the place to start is with what people believe about climate change, because that affects what we will do about it. The technique is very, very simple. I identify these emerging shoots and germinating seeds, select the ones that you want to regrow, prune them. When you have a tree stump, it will send up many, many shoots. So there's too much competition. Let's reduce the number of shoots and leave the best, the strongest. Protect them from fire, from livestock, from cutting, from ploughing, and that requires community engagement. Do we agree as a community that that future that we want, that better future, it's worth our little sacrifice in the very short term to protect these trees and let them grow? Tree does the growing, and then especially in poorer communities, they must have the right to utilise those trees. In the case of a carbon project, certainly the payments are their compensation, along with many direct benefits. In the case of other projects, people need to have the right to benefit from what they do. And so over the next 20 years, farmers in Niger created these agroforest parklands. This is not a national park that's locked up and people can't go in there. They have the full right to utilise their land. The trees create a more favourable microclimate for growing things in and help to restore the fertility of the soil. People can grow crops and raise livestock in between the trees. The trees themselves become an economic proposition. I now have fuel wood, poles for building. I can keep beehives, traditional medicines, wild foods. So yes, it certainly impacts the environment and the climate in a positive way, but it's not as if you have to sacrifice the economy in order to fix up the environment. The two go together. Over the next 20 years, this method spread at the rate of 250,000 hectares per year. And at the end of that period, there were 5 million hectares supporting 200 million trees without planting a single one of them. I don't exaggerate when I say this is revolutionary. Millions of dollars, decades were spent trying to push back the Sahara Desert using traditional methods, and it failed. This isn't an achievement of Tony or even World Vision. The heroes of this story are the world's poorest, most illiterate, most risk-averse people, but they saw something in this. They would benefit from this, and they simply ran with it. And there are many, many benefits. I won't go into all the details, but somehow trees in these climates and in many climates around the world, they're keystone species that moderate the microclimate, maintain soil fertility, and make life and livelihoods possible. If we don't have healthy functioning environments, don't count on having a sustainable livelihood for very long. In the case of Niger, what was the livelihood benefit of restoring 5 million hectares? Every year, without government subsidies or NGO interventions, 4.5 million people in Niger are earning an additional gross income of $900 million, about $1,000 per household. Every year, without artificial fertilizers, irrigation, improved seed, if you have the resources, if those things are accessible, good and well, go for it. The fact in Niger is people don't. By virtue of simply working with nature, instead of destroying it, farmers every year are growing an additional 500,000 tonnes of grain, enough to feed 2.5 million people. Just a very brief glimpse. How does this work? How is this even possible? Some species of trees share their water with the nearby crop. This photo was taken in a drought year. Not only is the crop close to the tree surviving, it's actually thriving. Some trees fertilize the soil. These soils are very depleted. People can't afford fertilizers. They're getting free nitrogen and many other nutrients as well. When we have a severe drought in many parts of Africa, livestock simply die, or people do a fire sale and sell them for minimal price, and it's a great loss to the farmers. When the trees come back, the pastures last for longer. The trees themselves provide fodder, edible leaves, seed pods, and in this particular case, even the bark has some nutritional value. Firewood, we don't think of this in our wealthy countries, but we don't have gas, we don't have electricity, and this is a real burden on women and children, sometimes walking many hours. Backbreaking work. It's sometimes dangerous. Children are needed to help with the load. And so this is transformational. This lady in this photo, she's had 12 years being able to access firewood close at hand. If the method didn't save her life, it certainly saved her health. So what's the future? What's the vision of World Vision? Our goal is to restore 1 billion hectares of degraded land worldwide. And we're very, very excited about this as we face this perfect storm: climate change, ongoing land degradation, even as global populations continue to grow. It's a very big number, and as large as World Vision is in its own right, we need partners to achieve something as ambitious as this. How will we do it? We will do as much as we can through direct programming in existing and new World Vision projects. However, that's not sufficient. We'll be reaching out to partners, governments, donors, other NGOs, environmental groups. Work with us, work without us. Here's the information. Let's just make this happen. As was the case in Niger Republic, there's organic spread, there's spontaneous spread. This method is cheap. This method is simple. It's even intuitive. As we do direct program, as partners do this, others will start to copy, and we'll get this exponential movement starting to take it forward. And then finally, create enabling environments. Can we advocate to governments to create sensible policies that encourage people to do these things? Can we work with markets to create value change so that people can earn a dignified living from timber, non-timber forest products, and from their agricultural produce? At the moment, in most cases, that's not the case. They get ripped off, or markets simply aren't accessible to them. We have 4 catalytic countries that we're starting in, but we're not limiting ourselves to those countries. World Vision works in 100 countries. There is just as great a need and an opportunity in Asia, in Latin America. We're focusing most of our attention in these 4 countries initially, at least. And this is a story of hope. Yes, I love the trees. The tree whisperer, Tony's the forest maker. But actually, the biggest change that I see is this restoration of hope. And when I go back in the villages, and I don't know if that's blown up enough for you to see the expressions on people's faces. Can you imagine? Can you put yourself in the shoes of a parent? What must it be like? You can't feed your children properly. You can't put nice clothing on them. They're running around in rags. You can't even send them to school. And day after day, you try, and you fail. It sometimes gets to the point where you're not even willing to try anymore because you don't want to be disappointed. And then here comes this simple solution, literally a nature-based solution at your feet. And it empowers you, it enables you to create that future that you want for yourself and your children. It's very, very liberating, and for me, that's the biggest change that I see. So for me, it's a great joy and a privilege to take part in this great enterprise, and I invite you, speak to World Vision Hong Kong, explore ways in which you can engage and have the same privilege yourselves. Thank you.
We would like to invite Daniel Misson to the stage for the next speech. Daniel Misson is a carbon programming and partnership manager in World Vision Australia. Daniel is a truly unique blend of skills and experience with 20 years of experiences spanning from banking and finance, strategy, program design, leadership, and business development, etc. His topic today is transforming lives and landscapes through nature-based carbon projects. Let us please welcome Daniel.
Thank you, everyone. It is a real pleasure to be with you all today. I'm truly humbled by the opportunity to share a little bit about the work that we've been doing to try and scale up nature-based carbon programming. It's always a tough act to follow getting onto a stage after Tony, but I'll try and hold your attention. Truly, I think there's never been a more important time to bring stakeholders together and reflect deeply on what more needs to be done to unlock the finance that is so desperately needed to scale nature-based solutions. And I think we all understand the immensity of the challenge set before us, the crisis of climate change, the crisis of biodiversity loss impacting the most vulnerable. But we also recognise that this challenge is being compounded by a glaring financing shortfall and the desperate need for more effective mobilisation of private finance. Low cost, scalable, de-risked and bankable climate solutions have never been more important. And so it's against this backdrop that World Vision sees the compelling opportunity presented by the growth of global carbon markets and the growing demand for a long-term supply of high-integrity, nature-based carbon credits. As Tony has just inspired us, World Vision has the programming approach. But through connecting FMNR and nature-based solutions with global carbon markets, we can create real, permanent, and verified climate impact with unmatched, best-in-class contributions to sustainable development outcomes. Where these credits are then used to support Paris Agreement-aligned net zero commitments and corporate climate action, we see huge potential to break down financing barriers and create real value for both the private sector and local communities, while at the same time making a significant contribution to climate change mitigation, adaptation, and biodiversity loss. And I think it's important to note at this point that this is not a conclusion that World Vision has reached overnight. Of particular note, World Vision stands alone as the organisation to have developed the first carbon project in Africa under the Yuen Clean Development Mechanism. And we now have a track record of over 20 years of experience implementing a portfolio of high integrity, nature-based carbon projects. Our Humbo Community Reforestation Program in Ethiopia was implemented with a highly vulnerable local community that had been experiencing the effects of climate change and severe land degradation. They'd been reliant on external food assistance from the World Food Programme for the 20 years prior to this project. But by practicing FMNR, the local community have experienced a remarkable transformation. Their landscape, ecosystem services, biodiversity, livelihoods have been transformed. So much so that within 6 years, they were selling grain to the World Food Programme. But what is particularly unique about this project was the shared value that has emerged by connecting the project to global carbon markets, where we estimate that it will generate just under 1 million certified carbon credits over its lifetime. Through the sale of carbon credits, we've been able to generate an additional long-term revenue source for the community, which they have used to finance their own development priorities. While simultaneously, our corporate partners can showcase the impact that they have contributed to by financing high-integrity climate action, supporting their ESG objectives and growing shareholder value. So scaling up from these quite remarkable foundations, World Vision is now moving ahead at pace to bring a portfolio of new investment-ready carbon projects to market. We've conducted extensive capacity building that's seen over 200 field-based staff trained to develop and identify nature-based carbon projects within their local contexts. Through a collaborative co-design process, we now have 6 FMNR reforestation carbon projects that have completed detailed feasibility assessments and are now ready for further investment to move into the next stage of project development. Our investment-ready projects are located in Kenya, Rwanda, Tanzania, Zambia, and Timor-Leste, and are all aligned in using World Vision's community-led landscape restoration approach with a strong focus on livelihoods and a targeted focus on gender equality and social inclusion. In total, we estimate that these projects will generate more than 18 million certified emissions reductions through registration with the Gold Standard for the Global Goals and VERA, respectively. And that's alongside our portfolio in Ethiopia that currently has around about 250,000 credits available for immediate purchase. So in bringing these projects to market, we think we've got a compelling value proposition, whether that's for investors that are seeking to secure carbon credits as an asset class, for corporates who are looking to secure a long-term supply of high-integrity credits as a part of their ESG strategies, or for philanthropists who see the potential in catalysing truly transformational impact through their giving. The foundation of our carbon programming portfolio is truly our unmatched long-term community presence, our trusted brand both globally and at the community level, and our market-leading risk and adaptive management capability, all of which comes from decades of experience transforming livelihoods and hope. Taken together, we think this creates real value. So, it's clear that we urgently need to break down barriers for investment into nature-based projects. And while undoubtedly this is a challenge, particularly in the carbon market space, where an ongoing lack of policy certainty and media scrutiny on low-integrity projects has really hampered investor confidence, we also see huge opportunity. Platforms like this are critical to building multi-sector networks, relationships, and trust, while simultaneously creating a platform to showcase the climate solutions that we so desperately need. Evidence-based, scalable, cost-effective, ready to deploy now, and bankable. So from World Vision's perspective, we would love to talk to you more about our 1 billion hectare vision, about the potential of carbon playing a role within that, and opportunities to partner to partner to bring that vision to reality. Thank you.
So thank you, Judy. So my name is Kelvin from SGS Hong Kong. Nice to meet you all. I'll just make a quick one. So we are a Swiss listed company. So we have 99,000 people all around the world. So we cover almost across different countries and different sectors. We have a lot of expertise, and we leverage our scale and expertise to really empower the whole global economic system to have a more responsible, balanced, and sustainable futures. So that's why we are here. We hope that we can help all the value chain partners to really helping them to align the global international standards and also work on more of risk mitigations in terms of policies and regulations, all these things. So this is a brief introduction about myself. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, Anthony Chung. I am trustee at Friends of the Earth Hong Kong, and also very glad to see fellow CESGA alumni here. But today I'm actually wearing the hats of my company. So a head of ESG at the Polymer Capital, which is an investor. So I'm trying to also supplement, what's that Dan and Tony has just shared on the return on investment part later on.
Thank you.
Thanks, Judy. To start, I'm Ken from Hong Kong EX. I'm very happy to present here. A very good forum to meet different people. A lot of friends downstairs, and I would love to discuss more. To start with, my company asked me to declare that today whatever I talk about do not contribute to recommending any investment opportunity. But how to understand our role is very simple. We bring them together because we have Hong Kong EX, other than the stock market that probably you're very familiar with. We also operate a carbon market in Hong Kong. We rolled it out in November 2022. That's where buyer and seller, investor or borrower meet, and hopefully we can share more with all of you here.
Thank you. And I'm Judy, so I'm currently a sustainability manager at Coca-Cola Hong Kong. But previously, World Vision was my employer. So I worked for World Vision for quite some time in the social impact side. So I'm quite familiar with the project model they're working on. I'm so glad today that I can be part of this symposium. Thank you. Welcome, Tony and Daniel, for coming to Hong Kong, first off. And it was inspiring to see what you guys have done in Africa, replanting all the trees and restoring the forest or the landscape. So I think I just want to dive right into the discussion here today. You know, Hong Kong, we're known for our efficiency. So when you talk about tree planting, what comes to my mind is how long it would take for trees to be realized, right? Waiting for trees to grow may sound too long for some of our audience here. So for those who might be interested in investing or looking into FMNR, what are some perspectives that you can share to convince our audience that, you know, investing in FMNR is worth every penny and there's good return on investment? So I'd like to have Tony and Daniel to take this one.
Thank you, Judy. If you think it might be difficult to convince investors, imagine talking to a farmer who's already hungry, they're poor, and they imagine that this tree is going to take up valuable space on their land. And so this isn't a new question for me. I face it every time I talk to farmers. Fortunately, the reality is with FMNR, and especially those trees that are regrowing from a mature stump, you don't have to wait that long for benefits. In the case of farming, we see increased crop yield, sometimes even double in the first year, because these trees, some of the things that I put up on the slides there, a little bit more firewood, fodder, wild fruits. Farmers experience benefits in year one. In our Humbo project, carbon payments started flowing in year 2. So we don't have to wait for a decade or 2 decades, actually.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. I might just take this microphone if that's okay with the sound guys. Look, I think it's a really good question, and a few thoughts on it. I think in the context of carbon projects, there's been a lot of development of technology to allow remote sensing for monitoring, reporting, and verification. And so in projects like Humbo, where monitoring events have happened every 5 or 6 years, we can now bring that forward and do monitoring every 2 or 3 years with remote sensing technology. So I guess to the kind of investment side of the question, I think that's a real opportunity for investors to see carbon credits starting to flow much more quickly. I think the other angle to that for me is thinking about, and use the word ROI. And it was mentioned earlier, so FMNR contributes to 12 of the 17 SDGs. And so for corporates thinking about supporting FMNR under their ESG strategies, that provides so much opportunity to showcase the good that those investments are having. And so from World Vision's perspective, we've put a lot of work into building monitoring and evaluation frameworks to be able to track these changes over time. And we think about environmental impact, so tons of carbon or hectares under restoration. We think about economic impact, so transformation of livelihoods, women's economic empowerment, and social impact as well. So all of that can kind of flow into ESG reporting. And on top of the transformation of land can support a much broader narrative in support of ESG outcomes.
So we just finished off with Daniel talking about the matrix, but riding on that, I want to go deeper into looking into, again, for investor or for those who are in the audience with the background in sustainability or in the ESG side, one of the core tasks or core to do is reporting. So how can someone who might be interested in investing in FMNR or natural reforestation or natural regeneration project be able to realize these impact in their reporting to showcase for their stakeholder to know that, okay, we're making real impact with good numbers and good evidence. So I'd like to have Anthony and Kelvin to take these questions.
So maybe I first. Okay, so maybe I first. So we are not living in a perfect world. So actually, our world needs to be really switched to a decarbonized system with high biodiversity. So having said that, so we need to how we bring it down into private company or private sectors. So this is why we are here. I think that this is very important is the ESG reporting. So we are not only doing the report, but also need to really report the impact as well. So we are not looking at the narrative, but we need to quantify it. So maybe I also bring a little bit of figures here. Actually, our biodiversity loss is happening, and it is unprecedented rate. And also, there, if we are looking at the business that we are having, around half of the GDP is based on the nature. So according to the WEF 2020 research, we are talking about 44 trillion US dollar. Apart from that, we are also looking into the nature positive transitions finance, which means the business value. We are looking at around $10 trillion by 2023. So this, why I bring these figures up, because we can see that a lot of policies, we can see that a lot of reporting framework. For example, lately, the GRI also further developed the biodiversity sections from 304 now is GRI 101 this year. And that's why I want to re-emphasize one thing is we are not looking at narrative content anymore. We are looking at to quantify it. So Mike, here is the question is, how do we quantify? So I'm not, because we have already talked some of the climate side or carbon side, I'm now more focusing on the biodiversity side. So just a quick heads up to you about how we really measure the carbon sequestering, for example. So we have a lot of carbons in the atmosphere. We can bring it back to the soil through the reforestation or forestry. So carbon can be sequestered. So we can directly measure the biomass or the carbon content in there. But what about the biodiversity? So biodiversity is another sense that when you're looking into the desert, it looks like we can't see much of biodiversity there. However, we are looking into at the genes levels. So there is a genes pool out there which is very important for ecosystem. So in this way, we need to understand how the genes really impacting to the ecosystem. At SGS, we have a solutions, we call it eDNA, that we collect the environmental data, which able us to really identify the presence, the abundance, or the distributions of not only the genes, but also the species as well. So this is how we measure it. So if anyone really looking into the FMNR, I would want to share with you is you are not only just putting the finance link to the projects, but also you can quantify the impacts. And we can see that the regulation is coming. The key questions now here for corporates or private sector that we need to ask is, how do we mitigate the environmental risk, the climate risk, and also the biodiversity risk? So this is what we want to share with you. And I also want to call out is that we have all these knowledge at Hong Kong. So I hope that we can partner more and in order to help this collaborative effort communications. Thank you.
Thank you, Calvin.
So I think a lot of us here, I know this session is, there are a lot of target audience are, business sectors, business leaders, or they are either head of ESG or IR or businesses or operations across corporates, okay? A lot of them are being, CESGA holders and know a bit of the finance and the relationship between the two. But I think the interesting part of it is think about reporting impact and also return on investments. And thanks, Calvin, for bringing up GRI standards. So for those of you who are doing businesses in EU, I'm sure you guys know the facts that, thanks to what EFRAG and all the CBAM regulations, if you are having businesses in EU, you have no choice. I mean, like the GRI standards is going to be heavily referenced in all the EU regulations with the businesses that you will be, those will be your customers. So it's the supply chain risk that you have to manage. John Sayers is my predecessors in the GRI Stakeholder Council, and I'm serving it. So we just can't emphasize how important it is. Now, the second part would be to do with the impact part and the engagement part. Now, Dan has actually mentioned like a lot of metrics that would be SDG related, definitely like SDG 10 on reduce inequalities and also 13 and 15, which I'm sure you know better than me. Now, a very real life example. Last week, my colleague, Abby and I was actually engaging with one of the biggest petrochemical refineries company, also plastic business in Taiwan, okay? For some reason, they have been ranked or measured or benchmarked in some of the global benchmarking on SDG, namely the World Benchmarking Alliance Nature Benchmark, the WBA Nature Benchmark. And when we interact with the finance and IR team, they're just like, what is this benchmark about? And they really, it's really the first time for them to come over with the situations that they need to look at all the likes of biodiversity and TNFD and all those stuff very closely. So I think, if for the business head here, it's always good not to play defensive and wait till you are being measured in some of the indices or benchmark that you started looking in that. Now, finally, the part on return on investments. Now, for finance people, I'm sure you guys know how to value a listed company very well, right? All the company's financials are in the public domain, and we discount the cash flow and reach to the fair value, okay? What if I'm telling you that the return on investment, impact, and reporting are working like a trinity? 三位一體, okay? Why I'm saying that is because for a lot of institutional investors, which Ken would know very well, we value company on something called CFROI, cash flows, return on investments, okay? And for the models that we are using these days, we are actually measuring a company's CFROI at different carbon prices, okay? Meaning that your CFROI could be maybe 10% to start with, but when carbon prices go up to 50 to 75 or $100 per ton, your CFROI changed and have an impact on your market cap and share price, okay? So that's why I was saying that these three, tax hand in hand together, and Ken will be able to share you how carbon credits will be able to help corporates on that.
Right. So perhaps a follow-up question to Ken. We talked about the ROI, we talked about the reporting side of it. So a more generic question would be, why would corporate want to invest in carbon reduction projects?
Sure. Continue on the topic doesn't mean Hong Kong EX just have a regulatory requirement so that the company need to do so. Can I zoom out a little bit to have a more macro view? Alice, my colleagues over there, we have a meeting with a Swedish professor a month ago in April, 2 months ago, now it's June. I think there are two topics which I also try to address. The first question, Judy, you asked about forestry, speed, efficiency, and all this. First point, there is an international body which is the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. they estimate a very simple relationship between the so-called climate reaction towards cumulative emission, right? Meaning how much emission will trigger what's the magnitude of the temperature rise, right? I give you an estimate, very simple. 0.45 degrees or half a degree Celsius, we need to remove around 1,000 billion tons or 1,000 gigatons as such. Now, it's very hard to picture it, to visualize it. I give you a context. In Hong Kong, as a city, annually, we emit around 30 to 35, 38 million tons. Now, in order to reduce half a degree, imagine the magnitude of removal that we need. So first question is, it's not just about, of course, regulation is important, reporting, but actions are equally important because we lean on different tools, a mix of tools in order to make it happen. Like mandatory market, i.e. quota, to manage emission, a company do not emit more than they should, otherwise penalty. However, actually, another part of the equation which is very, very important, and that's why probably we're here today, is any other methods to remove it. Because curbing emission doesn't mean you can remove and revert our world back to what it should be, right? So that is one of the very important points. Now, articulating the magnitude, and it's important that in order for this relation, I mentioned the half a degree and 1,000 billion tons holds true. There's a very, very key assumption is that the ecology holds. Imagine the temperature rise and lost control. And probably today we don't even need to discuss about a solution because it's already a very fundamental thing. It's a must-do, be it we like it or not. So I think that is my first point. So it is large magnitude, need removal in order for us, nature-based solution, to buy time, to get into other solution as a portfolio to combat the climate change, first point. Second point, there are impacts. There are impacts, but there are some impacts reversible. Some impacts are not. Now, what impacts are reversible? I mean, try to be a bit more friendly on a Wednesday PM, right? Okay, first, temperature rise is scientifically reversible, meaning you remove 1,000 gigatons, presuming the ocean does not emit because of diffusion, all this science thing, half the degrees should be able to achieve at least certain part of it. It is reversible. Something is not reversible. Sea level is not reversible. So better take action now. Aggregating these 2 points together, I think that explain why we need to look for different solutions today, including the project mentioned today, and why company needs to support it's about everyone. It's about environmental and social responsibility. It's about now. Even set aside the ethical and environmental consideration, we also eyewitness different companies or corporate engaging into project so that, at least from a business perspective, they manage risk. Aside an example, there are one of the also oil and gas company, they take carbon asset, you take it an asset, as a hedge to their diminishing business. Because of climate change, because the underlying business will need to change as a result of climate, because of EV usage, and etc. They need to change. But before they change, what do? They engage into carbon because they take it as a way to macro hedge their business. So there's actually some of the use cases are very, very imminent. The other good use case that even we're in Hong Kong, there are global requirements. For example, airline industry like Corsia, even now it's a pilot phase. In 2027, it becomes kind of quasi-mandatory, where airlines need to engage one way or the other carbon program in order to fulfill some of the international requirements. I think there are many, many reasons to explain why company will need to engage into carbon. why they need to engage now, and why especially in the carbon removal space.
Thank you for that very comprehensive understanding. So to the audience here, we need to act now. So, right? So, but looking into, when we talk about investment, there's always the consideration of balancing risk in the things that we do. So what kind of risk and challenges that, you know, are there foreseeable if we are to adopt FMNR in our investment portfolio? And what are the ways to tackle them to ensure that there's a long-term viability and a positive outcome from it? So maybe, Daniel, you want to speak on that?
Yeah, thanks. I'm happy to provide some comments on that. Maybe before I do, I'm going to put Tony on the spot. Tony, how long have you been promoting FMNR for?
At least 40 years, Dan.
And how many people have got grumpy at you for adopting FMNR?
Nobody has ever grabbed Tony by the collar and said, "You ruined my land, you ruined my livelihood." Only thank you, only transformation. So that's been an amazing experience, that such a simple thing has been so positive, so transformational.
Thanks, Tony. So I guess the point there, right, FMNR is low risk. It's inherently low risk. It's a no regrets strategy. So I think for me then, with the carbon hat on, it's going, we're implementing long-term projects, 30 or 40 years under gold standard and Vera. So obviously in that setting, there is going to be some risks. And so in my mind, I think about that from two perspectives. So I think about project design as being absolutely critical and getting the incentives right. So we've learned that from a technical perspective, it works, it's no regrets. So it's then making sure that we have the right economic incentives that come around that. And so from World Vision's perspective, yes, we promote FMNR, but we also promote a holistic and integrated livelihoods component in our projects. So, you know, because I think, as Tony explained, you know, the landscape and livelihood is really two sides of the same coin for the people that we're working with. Then alongside that, which is the key element or a unique element of carbon projects, is benefit sharing. And so through the sale of carbon credits, you can generate that long-term revenue stream for communities, which creates the incentive to protect and maintain their trees. So it's all about de-risking projects. I think my final thought on this is that, particularly in the context of carbon projects, if we're thinking about 30 or 40-year projects in developing countries where climate change is gathering momentum, things are going to happen. Across a portfolio, you know, of 5 or 6 countries, there are going to be droughts. There are going to be floods. So it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And so if you approach project design with that mindset, it's like, okay, how do we plan for that? And I think as World Vision, we have a really unique perspective here. Our DNA is about working in humanitarian response in some of the most fragile places like Somalia and South Sudan. And we can actually take lessons from that kind of programming and apply it directly into our long-term FMNR projects. And so quite practically, that's things like doing conflict and context assessments at the outset of projects. And then you actually develop adaptive management plans so that if our staff on the ground see things happening, we've already planned how we're going to respond to that so that we're not seeing reversal events of people cutting their trees down or resorting to negative coping strategies. So it's all about empowering local teams that understand the context to make decisions to adapt the project so that it can be sustained over the long term.
Thank you. How about Kelvin? Do you have anything to share on this?
Yes. So, yeah, good take on it. So the FMNR is a low risk, but just like any other projects, there's always challenging, like a lack of know-how, a lack of expertise, need someone spicing, financial constraints, and also some regulations, hurdles, this kind of thing. But how we bridge this kind of a project challenge, I would say, So I think corporate partnership is so important. Corporate partnerships can be in different form or mechanisms. For example, it can be direct investing, sponsorships, or even trade agreements. So you also previously brought up is the project design. So we also think that how the project can success, really we need to think about the implementations and also monitoring. So maybe we're looking into the whole, I would say, the roadmap, because even though the FMNR is really implemented, there is reforestations. So we also need to ensure that the farm can really have more regenerative agricultural practices in place. So these involve a lot of capacity building, training, which the private sectors can really finance and also empower the farmer there to really scale up the farming practices, for example, tillage, cover cropping, agroforestry, this kind of thing, in order to make sure that there is a sustainable yield. And also, apart from that, we can also looking into more the value chain side, which means that apart from the farmer, there are also small farm group. There is also some, let's say, farmer banks. There is also more downstream side, is the warehouse or the buyer, the trade agreements, these kind of things. All the corporates can work together to design a more financially viable way and also looking into the long term. When we talk about the long term, one thing is very important is that we shouldn't just rely on the public sector's public financing. So we also need to looking into more private sector, private capitals, which really looking into more long terms in order to make sure that the projects they have a sustainable model in order to ensure that the farmer is well trained, they have the good agricultural practices aligned with regulations and also aligned with the international standards. And also we have a proper monitoring in order to make sure that the project designs, the projects are transparent to all the investors and everyone understand the impact behind. So I think this would be the solutions to bridge the challenge, I would say.
Thank you, Calvin. How about Anthony?
Well, in terms of risks and opportunities, definitely the biggest risk would be transition greenwashing. Professor Bonnie and a few of us were at the HKU ESG Forum this morning, and we actually have that quite well discussed. Now, how to tackle it? I think definitely, the most important tools or weapons would be good measurement, metrics, and KPIs, and then Dan would be able to share with you all the metrics that FMNR has been using and has been how to make that into a robust framework. Now, for this project to be a credible, measurements, you need measurements on several pillars and categories. I mean, you need to have quantifiable environmental impact. You need to have social co-benefits. You need to have alignment with ESG framework and also metrics for effective stakeholder engagement. Okay, so I'm not going to bore you with all the metrics, with all of that. But if you want to know more, after this, chat with Dan or Dr. Jeffrey Hope, which is CEO of Friends of the Earth. Like they'll be able to tell you a lot more on it. I think there one final point, if not a wish list, is that where there has been examples that we have been looking for carbon offsets projects. So my group managements are very visionary. I mean, not only they would like to offset carbon to make sure that like at least for us, for our groups, scope 1 and 2, we are like carbon neutral, but we want to do it offset into like 2 for 1. Okay, we want to go carbon negative. Now, when I think the devils are always in the details. When we look for projects that is for carbon offsets, certainly there are some better projects versus worse. So not all projects are born equal. So, but I think what if you look at very closely into the metrics of FMNR that could touch on all the all 4 different pillars and the impact of it, right? I'm sure that you would be you'll be comforted that they are going to help in terms of their good quality carbon offset projects. And of that note, I definitely hope that Core Carbon but definitely could look at it and think about how to accredit some of these projects into the platform. I think it definitely helps corporates when they think of effective projects to help them to also maximize their impact as well.
Thank you, Anthony. So, speaking from experience from World Vision, just for the audience here, World Vision never short of monitoring system. So they have monthly, quarterly, biannually, and annual reporting system. So if you want to make sure your project performs, World Vision has a solution for you. Okay.
That's great.
Okay. So my question for writing on the corporate partnership, I want to take this question to Ken to see how can corporate partnership be formed in just general carbon reduction project. What are your takes on this?
Sure. Many things can be done, I reckon. Maybe just cite Hong Kong EX as an example. Shelving project like what what we mentioned, of course. We have the mechanism to gatekeep a project to be shelved in core, including vintage, project type, and so on. But more importantly, on a high-level basis, other than the platform that we have been operating, we have done multiple initiatives related to corporate. First, Hong Kong EX is a corporate itself. Otherwise, we have a regulator head, drop it, and then I put on a corporate head. We set an example, a very aggressive target. We have 2024 carbon neutral and 2040 net zero. We announced it last year. So I think we try to do something, at least to test out, because our philosophy is we set an example. We only encounter and know what problem to solve if we do it. Otherwise, you never know what to resolve. I think that is the first thing we want to share. And second one is, of course, on the Hong Kong EX positioning, we have formed different interest group. For example, we have set up a Hong Kong International Carbon Market Council. There are financial institutions, there are corporates in the council to share how to develop carbon market in Hong Kong, not just here, because in Hong Kong, it's still a very, very small city. How do we source supply from China, mainland, international? How do we bring this concept to the world? I think the key thing is, like what Judy also mentioned, one is engagement. Second is awareness, because we need to make sure that we deliver the right message and action, right? We need to translate that into action. So we do a lot of create some platform and council to develop this carbon market. On a national level, actually, we participate in the Belt and Road initiative. It's called Green Investment and Financing Partnership. It's one of the 8 national initiatives that we have. But more importantly, within that organization, there are a lot of companies, corporates. Actually, they're looking into this kind of project because the involvement in Belt and Road in action. And in Hong Kong, only 2 entities have joined the organization. One is us, and other one is Hong Kong MA, the Hong Kong Monetary Authority. So all this, we try to want to make sure that we get the right engagement to different levels of stakeholders, understand the problematics, solve the problem, actions.
Thank you. How about Tony and then Daniel?
Thank you. Last week I was in Berlin and I spoke at a company premises. The company makes precision instruments, and they held 2 events. The first one for their staff, and the family owners of the company donate from their personal money to an FMNR project in Ghana. The company itself, through some of their ESG funding, also contribute, and they invited the staff. So many of the staff were also contributing to this project. And while morale was already very high, it's a very well-run company and people have stayed there long term, I'm sure that their involvement with this project has increased that morale, and people are very proud to be part of that company. The second event, the company invited their partners, their customers, and their suppliers. And I gave a similar talk, but a little bit longer than the one that I gave tonight. And another speaker spoke specifically about the project which this company was supporting. And again, these associates were so proud to be working with a company that was engaged in these activities, and they saw opportunities for even using that information in their own marketing material. And I felt that night many of them were interested, they were drawn in. Perhaps we should be supporting projects like this as well. In terms of reporting, it's very, very important. And as you said, World Vision's good at monitoring, and the corollary of that is reporting as well, providing documentation. Where's your money going? What's the impact? And even giving those donors, and in some cases investors, the opportunity to go and visit and to see for themselves. This is a real way of maintaining those partnerships and giving strong engagement. It's not a matter of giving the money and I've ticked that box and forgetting it. These partners are very engaged and very proud to be engaged.
Daniel.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, look, I can add to that. I think there's been some really, really good comments that have come out already. I think, for me, there's a financing gap, yes, but there's not a capital gap. So there is enough money in rooms like this around the world to make a significant contribution to climate action. And so the gap, which I think we've highlighted, is about connectivity, it's about communication, it's about awareness. So I think for me, that is just a critical piece that we have to break down those barriers so that there is more understanding of the solutions like FMNR that are ready to deploy right now. I think as well, for me, when I think about this challenge, I feel like we need to create more on-ramps for corporates to engage in climate action. And by that, I mean, obviously for some corporates, carbon credits are the right solution. It's a part of their ESG strategy. But that's not going to be for everyone. There's going to be a lot of corporates that don't need certified credits and can just make additional contributions to climate action beyond their value chain. And I think the exciting thing about FMNR is that it gives us the ability to actually tailor a suite of on-ramps at different stages along that spectrum, from certified credits through to really ambitious projects that could transform millions and millions of hectares of land. Yes, hard to measure and monitor, but could be transformational. So I think we need to find more ways for corporates to say yes by having products that fall along that spectrum. And then, I think Tony spoke about shared value, really. How do we get better at arming corporates and investors with the knowledge of the shared value around their contribution to climate action? It drives employee engagement, shareholder value, attracting and retaining talent. All of these things are latent within the opportunity of investing in FMNR. Through all the reporting that we just spoke about, I think we need to get better at drawing that out so that corporates and investors can communicate it.
Thank you. I found their sharing to be so insightful. And as I was listening to them, what comes to mind is Calvin talked about environmental biodiversity, right? Impact. But the core of FMNR, I feel like, is the social impact as well. It could not be FMNR without the social side of it. And social impact is coming our way in Hong Kong. In the UK, for example, all the awarded project from the government needs to show that the project has the social return on investment as well. So I think the trend will be more and more corporate looking into how do you monetize our investment into social program, and what does that mean to our stakeholder, right? So that was very insightful. So I think we have 5 more minutes. Okay, so I think we have a Q&A session from the audience, right? Do we have any questions from the audience?
Yeah, so now it's open. Oh, Judy, please.
Do we have a...
So just to brief how you can submit questions, you scan the code here, and Judy will select the questions out of all the questions submitted, and she will help to ask the questions on your behalf.
But I think we have a very eager audience here, so maybe we can pass the mic to him. We can pass the mic to, yeah.
My name is S.S. Yuen from World Vision International. World Vision is a sort of a child-focused humanitarian organization, and we are the largest partner of World Food Program of UN for the last 2 decades. And through this experience with World Food Program, we work in refugee camp, work in those areas with conflict, with famine, etc. So we understand that those who suffer under this climate change, in fact, is the poorest people. So I think just now the moderator said the societal impact is very important. So I think when we talk about the FMNR, in fact, the concern is mainly about the people first. It's a people focus. And of course, because people and environment are all interconnected. So that's why I think when we saw the problems encountered or the poverty encountered by the people, I think we try to find out what are the reasons for this happen. World Vision work in Africa, South America, with a sort of area development program. In every program, we stay there for 15 years. And FMNR, in fact, in many cases, work together with the community and also the child sponsorship. We try to improve the well-being of children, try to improve the well-being of female, especially those in Africa. I think you know some of this, the women who suffer a lot because of this Sui-see, the conflict, COVID, and climate change. So I think this is a problem. I think so. We GRI standard. We understand a lot of statistics, a lot of calculation. This is one aspect. The other aspect is, of course, the society, the community, the people aspect. When we restore land, the focus is to help the people to restore hope. So I think Tony in these 40 years have experienced this. When Tony read his book, when he was so desperate, was disappointed, and then when he saw this shoot coming out from the stump, he restored hope. So I think there are 2 aspects of this project. So I just want to say it's very important that environmental and people, this work is work hand in hand. It's very connected. Of course, I think for some corporation, I'm an advisor to a local power company. For the GRI, we need to have a lot of this statistic, these figures. But on the other hand, we need to have this the other aspect, which I think the moderator has mentioned. So thank you.
Thank you. So that was a very good comment and feedback. Okay, so we have 2 good questions here. So I think this question might be for Tony or Dan. They're talking about on-the-ground implementation. So what challenges do farmers face when implementing FMNR, and how can these be overcome?
So there are beliefs. Initially, people believe that trees do take a long time to grow, and they're hungry today. There are fears. Maybe if I grow these trees, my crop will be shaded and not produce as much food. So we need to overcome them. There are threats to the trees, wandering livestock, fire. People need fuel wood. Somebody might come and cut your tree down. So how do we agree as a community to overcome those threats? In many countries, there are policy issues, and the policies don't give people any incentive to do this work because there's no guarantee that they will benefit. So in World Vision programs, we have advocacy. We bring policy makers to the field to speak to the communities and see just a little tweak in those policies would be a great incentive for these people to do this work.
Great, thank you for that. So the next question, I think I will leave it to Calvin, Ken, or Anthony. It talked about if firms are very interested in investing and engaging with FMNR project, this is an international project. So what are some of the challenges that the firms in Hong Kong will face locally when investing in an overseas project?
So maybe I take it first. So
Sure.
I take a light-hearted one. So actually, why we always asked or commissioned by the company, because due diligence. So the key reason is if a responsible company, once they invest for long term. And also they want to make sure that there is an impact or the money goes. So that is why it's very important that not only, I would suggest, even though I'm a third-party people, don't just commissions third-party people, but also at least take some samples, take the ownerships, set your foot on the ground, and then see how is the impact, what is your investing. So you also can leverage some of the international control body, we will say, to understand the regulations, because you may not have all the resources to go to each countries to understand, but at least you get involved and you can also allocate or designate someone else to help you to really check or implement the due diligence. I think that's it from my side.
Take a try. Yeah. Put down my EX head again. Yeah. Multiple feedback that we have from the market. I think the first one is totally agree on the due diligence side. Corporate tends to choose their own projects because they want to, one is to understand the quality of the project, hence the credit. Second one is the relationship between the project and the business, so that they need to justify to the shareholders and other stakeholders. So there are, of course, there are many ways to mitigate that. Personal opinion, for example, how do you communicate with your shareholders? How can you visualize the impact? Because usually they will ask about like, why do you spend this kind of money and why the project is relevant to the business and why not? Many of this kind of question is normal, right? So I think that is one of the aspects that people need to address, be it company, especially in Hong Kong, knowing most of the project, if not in mainland, that would be somewhere in ASEAN, Middle East, LATAM, which is quite remote. So I think how do we articulate these two would be very important, one. Second one is that happened in the past where it also formed one of the key assumptions for what we have been doing. It's a counterparty risk, more from a risk perspective, be it from a legal. For example, if a buyer or seller deal with each other and like what Kevin mentioned, it could be one-off, it could be, transactional, it could be an uptake, right? You can sit on long-term risk. So for example, you might want to choose a seller, like World Vision that, or credible body, so that you want to mitigate this kind of long-term risk, or trying to do it via platform in order to mitigate this kind of risk. Indeed, it happened in the past where different jurisdictions, when they try to deal with each other, some cases, it could be default case, it could be fraud case, happen. And that's why when we design our core client platform, we try to mitigate counterparty risk and deal with an international legal system. I think that is the second point to make. Third point, I think is more like ongoing, because not just looking backward, but because projects are looking forward as well. How effective MRV could be deployed and keep everyone informed that the project is really progressing at its plan. It's the same context, not just about carbon, but could be also applicable to any other like philanthropy projects and so on. I think probably those are the three things I can think about for now.
Yeah, I think to move on from there, I think we could also look at the upside for it. So I think for the very first one of the very key topics emerging these days would be the topic on just transition. So transition to a low carbon world at the same time, taking care of the differentials and also need of the local people across different countries, providing the right jobs and opportunities and improving the livelihood of the people. So that is something that a lot of institutional investors are very putting their focus on these days, and it's very top on the agenda. So I think definitely one thing that companies could look at, and in addition to that, I think we are time for actions. I mean, I'm sure a lot of us are here, for on the World Environment Day. This is probably not our first event on the day, but I think one of the things that we could take from here is about action. Like whether we could have we have some very quality projects both locally and globally, and how we could make use of this project to change the livelihood of many people. I mean, how could be better than that, right?
Yes, totally agree. So I think we are coming to the end of this panel discussion. But before we leave the panel, I just want to give each of you some time to share the last words with us. What do you want the audience to take away today? Maybe starting from Dan.
I've thought a lot about this. I had the incredible opportunity of traveling to Zambia earlier in the year and doing some stakeholder consultation with local communities about a new carbon project. And it was amazing to me seeing how FMNR brought people together. So we had local communities, the poorest of the poor. We had government officials, and we had traditional leaders, chiefs, all in the same room for the first time, talking about their vision for the future, how they were going to work together to restore their land with FMNR. It was really inspiring seeing it come together. And I think we've heard a lot about FMNR tonight. It's both a technical practice, it's about land, but it's about people and hope. And whilst that trip was very inspiring, it was also very sobering. I was there in the middle of a drought. People were going hungry. The government declared a national emergency because people were starving. And they just enacted 8 hours a day of power shedding, so no power, which leads to more deforestation because people have to cut trees for charcoal. So this vicious cycle of climate change playing out before my eyes. And so as I came home and I reflected on that, I think for me it's this point around urgency. It's act now. World Vision is ready. We've got projects that are ready to have a transformational impact and create shared value. And I think that's a really unique combination. We're really excited about it. So yeah, I think that would be my closing comments.
Thank you. So much of the emphasis tonight has understandably been transactional. What are the timelines? What are the risks? What are the returns on investments? That's understandable. I want to invite us to look at this through another lens, our shared humanity. I'm a father of 4, I'm a grandfather of 8, and I wonder what future am I leaving for these children and grandchildren? And so the lens that I would also like us to look at this through is legacy. How do we want to be remembered? What do we want to be remembered for, the way we leave this world? Today, we have the opportunity to act decisively and actually prevent some of that climate chaos that's knocking at our children's door, even our own door, actually. Future generations may not have that opportunity. So how do we want to be remembered? What do we want to do with the rest of our life?
Thank you.
Just one word. Today is the start, and now is the time. Yeah.
Maybe I also want to say 2 words. It will be a little bit long. So one, I would say it's about science, and the second is about the partnership. Today, we talked about a lot of carbon credits related to the additionality. And also we bring up some societal values, which is more looking into the co-benefit side. So I think that when we talk about all these two things, we need science and also partnership in order to make sure that the projects that we are having have a long-term visions on it. So that's mine.
Thank you. Okay,
Thank you.
so let's give it a hand to our panelists.
Thank you all for your insightful discussions.
Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3.